Hi everyone, Sandy from Hobby Headquarters, and today we're going to be building the Academy T34-76, and this one is done up in German markings. I'm kind of excited to build this one because this is a Soviet tank, but rather than building just the standard green color that the Soviet tanks come with, we're going to be able to do some really cool camouflages on this. This is a great brand new kit that just came out, and I'm excited to get started on it. And I want to thank Academy for sending this out this early sample for us, so let's get started on it. Before we get started, I want to talk to you about something that really nice that Academy gives you inside of this kit, and that's the different types of road wheels that they've included. They are very, very detailed, as you can see right here, but the nice thing is they give you complete sets to do all the rubbers like this, the rubber like this that don't have the holes drilled out, and the all steel wheel version as well. And if you look inside the instructions, there are lots of variations, and you can do rubber road wheels with one steel, the three steel in the middle with the two rubber on the outside edge, the other part where it goes rubber, steel, rubber, steel, rubber, just all different types, and they give you enough to do all different types of variations, so you can do any type of vehicle that you want on it. Plus also they include a turret basket too, which is kind of a nice little thing that you don't normally see on too many of the T34s. So that's just to start off right here. I think that's a great little feature that we'll be able to do it. I'm probably going to go ahead and do something with the, like this type right here with the basket, because I like the basket and the steel wheels with just the outer rubber wheels. So we're going to go ahead and start sanding and filing all those down. Okay, as we start to work on the hull here, you'll notice that it's a multi-piece hull, and I was doing a little dry fitting a little bit before we started filming here, and very, very sharp, tight fit to it. There was no warpage or anything involved with the lower hull, so it just, you can see it just lines right up really, really well. We'll put some more glue on it once this starts to take hold on it. And then there's also a center stiffener that'll go in after a little while too, that'll really help firm it up. So while we're doing that, put a little extra glue here and here. And then I'm going to show you some of the suspension while that dries up. Now, the way the suspension is you have the individual arms that will go inside here. Now, you'll notice that there's 3 bumps inside the well here. And what you want to do is, to make it all line up, you want to get this hole actually on the smallest bottom hole. And I tell you that right there because if you don't do it that way, I almost started gluing it the other way, and the suspension will be off on size. Now you'll also notice too, there's actually 4 different variants, and because this will all be on the inside of the vehicle, they all look kind of similar, so rather than mess them all up, I actually just took a felt marker and wrote on the inside, because once you glue this in here, that's going to go something like that, and you'll never see that D. So, but that'll keep all of your pieces straight, because there's multiples. There's some C's, 1 or 2, 3 A's, 3 C's, and a D and a B. And that's going to be true with the suspension arms too. They're, each one of them, there's actually 4 different suspension arms. So what I'm doing is I'm going to do them piecemeal, gradually doing all the, like this one is part 30. We're going to do all the 30s first, and that way we don't accidentally put on the wrong suspension, glue it in place, and not realize it till later when the wheels don't line up properly. So I'm going to go ahead and start gluing up the rest of this, and then we'll get on to the next step. Okay, now that we've attached the center spline here in the front and all of the suspension arm wells are all in place here, you'll notice how they all line up nicely, nice and square. And the bathtub hull part now is really, really sturdy with the support of these, because actually all of this acts as a stiffener too, because it's connected to top and bottom. So this is a very, very sturdy flat hull too, and when we lay it down on the surface, lays flat, has a nice Should have no problems with all the wheels touching the ground as well. I chose the 2 solid rubber wheels on the front and back and 3 steel wheels in the middle of the vehicle. Now that's not actually one of the options in the kit, but I liked the way it looked, and I actually saw a real version of it online that way. As we start to lay the tracks, I've glued the top layer of tracks in there, and I've actually shoved a sanding stick inside of there to hold them in place, to keep them nice and flat up against the wheels. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start laying out the individual tracks that are going to wrap around the drive sprocket and return roller. Now we're going to start gluing the individual wheels together, and just by brushing a little bit of glue in between each crack. I've also started sanding the injection pin marks out of the tracks as well, mainly on the ones that are going to be on the outside that are going to be seen. Now we're going to want to let the tracks dry for about 4 or 5 minutes, just enough that they are still very, very pliable, because we're going to want them to easily wrap around the drive sprocket. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a little glue on both sides of the track, and then a little bit around the drive sprocket itself, making sure you get it wet enough, and then just putting the tracks in place. And then you got to just start working them around a little bit, putting them down, wrap that bottom piece all the way around. You know, I also put a little bit of glue on the bottom down there as well. And then using some tweezers, you want to just get all the pins to line up properly. And it takes a few seconds, but it's nothing difficult. And a lot of times the other side actually fell right into place. This one is giving me a little bit more difficulty, but it too will just eventually pop in. And then after you've done that part, you want to brush just another little coat of glue over the top of it. Now we're going to go ahead and attach the bottom tracks, which once again are all one big solid length. So just putting a little bit of glue on the bottom, we'll just line those up. And actually, yeah, there it goes. Letting that dry for a little while. And now doing the exact same thing we did with the drive sprocket, we're going to do it with the return roller in the back. The main difference is the front takes 11 separate pieces of track, the back takes 10. So you want to keep in mind when you're doing it to make sure that you get it right that way, or they won't line up. And we're just going to let the track dry a little bit, about 5 minutes, while it's still soft enough, and then we're just going to wrap it around and do the exact same thing. Okay, once you get all of the tracks all glued down into the right position, I'm going to go back over with some sandpaper and clean up any injection marks or any sprue left over on it, and get them all cleaned up nicely. Okay, in this next little part right here, you have to drill out some holes to attach this bracket, and then actually have a little bit larger hole just as you go forward, because as you're going to attach this out this back bend, it requires quite a large hole to line up, and then you're going to line up the brace underneath there. So it just makes it a little bit easier if you have a decent sized hole to begin with right there, and it'll mostly be covered up. Okay, I've gone ahead and glued on some of the little tiny pieces, some of the little claps and stuff. I've left off the tools and the extra track because we're going to paint that all separately. And I've also gone ahead and super glued the photo etch grills on the back here, which will be nice because you'll be able to see through them and see the louvers that are partially open. Now this vehicle has the ability to put these type of gas tanks on, or the drums that are on the side, depending on which version you did. I thought this looked a little bit different, so as you saw in my earlier part, attaching those. So we put that on just to kind of change it up. We want to make the vehicle look a little bit different. Now it turns out that the Germans had captured over 300 of the T34 76s I was reading into, and there's all different variations on it, on wheel patterns, fuel tank patterns, just what the Germans did to it. So there's a lot of variation you can get out of this kit, which will be really fun to do multiples of it. So we've got the whole lower hull done. Now we're going to start to work on the turret, which they really did a nice job of putting a lot of thick texture on the outside here. So once that gets painted up, that'll look really good. So let's start on that right now. Okay, this doesn't have any polycaps in it. This just uses the gluing the front and back together to use as a pivot. Just glue that into place right there. And once the glue sets up on that, you'll still have range of motion on the barrel. And just to point out too, the barrel is slide molded and has just a slight little seam that we're in the process of taking out, and that's, like I said, once again, these foam blocks work really well, because as you're going over it won't leave a flat spot on it like a sanding stick will. Okay, as we put the last little pieces together on the turret, everything fit really well on the turret. There was a slight little bit of a crack right here when I was gluing this together that I'm going to fill with a little putty after I get this all together. But I wanted to show you guys the general shape and how well it all fit together. And there we go. And like I said, it's just going to take a little bit, little putty and then a little fine sanding with the block sander, and that'll get it right out of there. But that'll look really good, and then it'll pop right into shape right here. So we've got pretty much our whole vehicle done. Just a few more of the grab handles and things like that we have to put on, and then we'll get to painting. Okay, I've gone ahead and finished up putting up the grab handles, putting all the other pieces on. Plus, I like the way the turret basket looked. I thought I'd give it a different shape to the T34, so I went ahead and put that on there. And when it comes to filling in the gap right here, I want to tell you about a product. This is made by Vallejo, and it's their plastic putty. It has a very, very thin nozzle on it, and the best part of all about this is not a solvent-based putty. This is all water-based, so you can actually take a little Q-tip with a little water, put your line on it, and then just wipe the excess away. It's not like some of the solvent-based ones that grab into the plastic and then requires you to do a lot of sanding and things like that. So yeah, it's oh yeah, there it is. There's the English version on it. Yeah, but it's made by Vallejo, and very, very good product. Highly recommend this putty. Okay, now that we have the vehicle all painted up, we're going to start off by spraying the entire thing with XF69, the NATO Black, and this is going to be our shadow coat. I'm going to begin spraying the entire model with XF2, the flat white from Tamiya. Normally I will do a more stark black and white pattern, but what I decided to try with this one right here is to do the stark black and white pattern, but then lightly go over the entire model to kind of blend, so we have more black, white, and some gray areas to get a little bit more subtle variation when we put the top coat of paint on. Okay, we just got done putting on our highlighting coat over the shadow coat, and now because we're going to do this as a captured German vehicle, we're going to paint the entire vehicle with XF60, the dark yellow, but we're going to go a real light coat so we can see a lot of this two-toning come through. Okay, I took the model off the painting table for a few minutes and brought it over to this table. The light's a little better over here. I wanted to show you, and hopefully you can see it, the subtle variations in the tone of the paint. It doesn't look super monotone like sometimes if you put a real heavy coat on. So I'm liking the way that's coming out right now. So we're going to do the green and brown camouflage over the model. Okay, I've gone ahead and put the decals on, and I went and put a couple of coats of microsol on it to really soften them, to make them really go into all the little nooks and crannies that are on this really rough cast texture on the kit. After that, I went and sprayed it with dull coat. One coat of that to seal in the decals after we let all that other stuff dry. So now the first thing we're going to start doing is we're going to start doing a chipping effect. And we're going to do it a little bit differently this time. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, what I've gone ahead and done is I've taken our regular dark yellow, our surface color, and I put 10 drops of the paint in a little cup here, and then put 1 drop of white just to lightly lighten down the color of the base. Now we're going to take a real fine brush and we're just going to start to add some chips that have a little bit of depth to them. So we're not going to go too much on it, but right around the edges right here. We're going to do the chipping process kind of like in a double 2 steps. Some of the deeper chips and then some lighter chips up on top of that. So I'm not going to do the whole thing right now. I'm just going to kind of show you. Put a little bit across the edge there, some of the in through there. We're going to let that dry for a few seconds because we put very little paint on it, so shouldn't be. Then I mixed up a batch of our chipping color, and this is 60% of NATO brown. Well, unfortunately the thing's blocked out, but it's NATO brown, and 40%, oh, wrong one, 40% German gray, or excuse me, NATO black. And what we're going to do after that now is, now we're going to take our darker color and just start to fill in the areas that we would chip. And this is going to give it a little depth to it, as if the paint scratched in some areas and chipped off, but still part of the paint left there with a little different color behind. Hopefully you'll be able to see it as we start to go along here. And you can start to see what I'm talking about by getting the chips with a little depth to them. So I'm going to start going over the entire vehicle doing that. Not too much, but I wanted some bigger, deeper chips as if things had been dragged off the side. And then we're going to go ahead and put the saw in there. Okay, I thought I would show a little bit more, since I'm going over the entire vehicle and I can get a decent camera angle, more of the chipping effect that we're doing. The nice thing about this first layer that we're putting down, because it's supposed to represent the base color of the vehicle, not fully coming off but taking some of the top layer of that off, you can actually make it go right over the red, brown, and the green, because it's in such small amounts on here. So we're just gonna, I don't want to go too crazy, but a lot of people are asking about, you know, doing some more chipping and beating up the vehicle a little bit more than normal. So although I don't like to always do that, this will be like a good test bed for showing you that. So as you can see, I started going over a lot of the turret here, and you want it to be subtle, because when we put the next layer on, that is going to be more of the actual chip itself. This is more of like the smudged, scratched paint that didn't go all the way through. So now that I've shown you, hopefully you can see that, we're going to let that dry for a few more minutes, and then we're going to go back with our darker scratch color and show you that. Okay, Actually going to start on the other side here since I've already done that area. And we're going to use our chipping color. I'm just putting a small amount on the brush. And then really lightly just start to fill in the light marks that you had just done. And the more random you can make the pattern, the more realistic it's going to look on it. And you can of course put the scratches themselves separately on just all the areas. They don't need to have that real deep look on everything. Just some will kind of break up the pattern of the vehicle, especially around the turrets and things where guys are getting in and out of the vehicles. Paint's going to start to wear off. And all of this, of course, is subjective. There's however beat up you want to make the model, that is completely up to you. I see a lot of times you see videos and stuff of things that are really beaten up. Sometimes I personally am not crazy about it because I think it looks a little bit overdone, but sometimes just a little bit on it right here will look pretty nice. And you can put a few other little chips here and there. So hopefully you can start to see those pretty well. Now they do have to dry a little bit and they'll flatten out a little bit more too. And kind of a funny thing, I still have kind of quite a bit of a sheen on the vehicle even though I sprayed it with dull coat. And I shook the can up really well, so it's still a little bit shiny, but we're going to dull that down later on anyway with the dust coat that we put on. But I really like the way these scratches with depth start to show up on it. So I'm going to do more of that now. Like I said, I wanted to give you guys a little bit more of a close-up view of how we do it. But the camera's kind of in the way, so it makes it a little bit easier for me to do it without the camera. So I'll be back in a few minutes after I finish all that up. Okay, now we're going to tie together a little bit more of the scratches, so we have a lot of little subtle ones on there as well. So we're just going to take a little piece of foam using our same scratching stuff and we've dipped it in just slightly, and then on the towel you want to knock off quite a bit of it so you don't put too much on in one area. And we're just going to start going over. Let me take this off completely. Start some of these areas that we'll have some scratches, but not as bad that we'd want to put on it. Along the top here. Hopefully you can see how it's starting to put real tiny scratches, especially around the panel lines, the high points. And this will kind of just help to blend the bigger scratches and the little scratches together so they don't look like they're separate from each other. So I am going to continue doing the entire model with this. Not too heavily, like I said, just in some areas we want to make it a little more pronounced than others, but hopefully you can see how that's starting to look. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up the rest of it. Okay, now I've mixed up some model wash using the black, and I've thinned it down quite a bit with some extra water inside of it. And we're going to start down here, and we're just going to start going over, doing a wash on some of the lower areas here to make them not so uniform. And we're actually going to use the same one to go over the tops of the vehicle as well, to kind of break it up. Now I've taken some of Vallejo's fuel stains, and we're just going to do some marks right around the openings to the fuel tanks. And you can make the pattern just kind of sporadic, just as if fuel would have spilled out. And we'll let that dry on there now. Okay, this is a little minor thing, but you'll definitely be able to see it. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of our polishing powder, and we're just going to go around, if I can get my hand in here, the insides of the steel wheels. And we're going to get all of that to a more of a, not a polished metal, but of a metal color, because it was just steel on steel, so you would see quite a bit of the metal showing through. This is kind of hard to do in this camera angle, but you'll get the idea. I'm going to do all three of the center wheels on both sides right now. Okay, now we can go ahead and start working on the tracks. And just like we have a lot of other times, we are going to use the Desert Dust as a fixer, and then using light sienna from Vallejo as the actual pigment. Now we dip our brush into the Desert Dust and just start putting a nice sized layer of it on the fronts of the tracks here. Now I'm going to do all the entire tracks, but I'm going to show you on the front here because it's the easiest to visually see. And then just dipping the brush right into the light sienna, the two will mix together, and you can kind of pack it on. And it doesn't matter if it goes on too thick, because once this dry, you can knock off any of the excess that you don't want on there. So doing that type of thing. And then what we'll do is, after this dries a little bit more, we're going to take a paper towel and kind of just wipe off some of the excess. So the high points, which you can even see with my finger now that I see it, start doing that, and you'll see some of the high points start to show through, which we will take a little bit of a burnt, or not a burnt steel, but like a dark steel, and kind of go over that to kind of give it a little depth to it. So I'm going to go ahead and do all the tracks that in here, on the tops, all that piece is right there. It'll be easier rather than filming, but you get the general idea. And we'll be doing the exact same thing on the entire set of tracks. Okay, I've gone ahead and done some more of the weathering on it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to shoot the entire thing with XF57 buff. Now it's thinned down a little bit more than normal, and we're also probably going to be shooting it from about 12 to 15 inches away, and we're just going to put a light little mist over the entire vehicle. Nothing too heavy, but it's just going to dull down all of the shinier areas on it. Well, here's our completed model. Hopefully you can see all the chipping effect that went on. I didn't want to, like I said, overdo it too much. Wanted to make it look like it was a beat-up vehicle. We went ahead and used the fuel stains from Vallejo on the back here, and you can see how they pulled around the gas cap and then drained down a little bit on that little flap right there, as well as the top. Now that is not 100% dry. That will dry a little bit more, but we'll still have a little bit of a shine too, like a fuel would have on it. You know, kind of go over the entire thing. I did go ahead and clean off part of the tracks and put some of the metallic, the dark metallic, on the front there, and put on the rest of the tools. So this was a great kit to put together. Very simple, not too many parts. I actually had quite a bit of fun because you get to choose the style you want between all the different road wheels, the cupolas. They have multiple cupolas inside. You can put the turret bin on it, and it's a Russian piece of armor they get to paint up with German camouflage on it and have some fun with it. So we really got to beat it up a little bit more than we normally will. I will put an antenna inside there. I just didn't stretch any sprue for it, but that's the one last thing I will do on it. But like I said, it's a very, very good kit, fun to put together, and I would highly recommend it. Even for a beginner, should have no problems at all putting this together. So I want to thank you as always for watching our videos, and please stay tuned because we have many, many more coming.